Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ed America. My name is James, one of the e-guides here in Ed America, and we welcome audience members joining us here and online. We hope that you guys are doing well and staying safe. For those of you that do not know, Ed America is now open to the public, so feel free to bring your friends and families to come join our events and facilities in person. Today we will be having the GED test preparation, reasoning through language arts. But before we begin, let's break the ice with a little game. I have here a fun fact. The GED program has the largest alumni group in the world with more than 20 million GED graduates since its inception in 1942. Now, other than that, don't forget to take a selfie and tag at America's Instagram account. And now, without further ado, let me introduce everyone to our facilitator for today. We have Zachariah Shatkam, a GED qualified instructor. Zach, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Hello, and welcome back, everyone, to another session of GED Prep Class by At America. And I hope you're fine and doing well. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I'm sure you can see it. I don't have to ask you this. This is one of the most repeated questions anyway. This is session 5, and today, in continuation of other sessions, we're going to talk about reading informational texts. If you remember in the previous session, we kind of reviewed the whole session, like all the sessions that we have had so far. So today we're not going to do that, but we'll talk about what we have studied so far. So for today's session, this is the text structure that we talked about. I'm not going to go through this. This is the text structure, the previous session, and only a brief recap of the previous session. By the way, today is really graded because we have an amazing quiz coming up. So be ready for that. That'll be in the end. Anyway, in the previous session, we talked about cause and effect, which is one of the text structures that is used by writers. We talked about compare and contrast. We talked about chronological order. We talked about problem and solution. We talked about sequence writing, and descriptive writing. So descriptive writing, we said that it's also called spatial writing because it describes the space or the environment around a character, basically sets up the scene, helps you imagine what it's like. Okay, I'm going fast. This is repetitive. To get you all started, let's open our Mentimeter app and go to this Mentimeter link, 7756170000. And you will be writing 5 supporting details to the ideas on Mentimeter about the following statements. I have to fix that. Sorry about that. Okay, so the first statement is GED program, with the first idea is GED program is an amazing opportunity for people who want to get their high school diploma. 2 is prison is one of the worst places on the planet. And 3 is students have a lot harder time in school than the teachers. So if you remember from the previous session, session 1, 2, and 3, I think we went in detail about main ideas and supporting details. And we said that the main idea means the biggest idea of the whole passage, or the central idea of the whole passage, the idea that holds the whole passage together, either most or all of the sentences in the passage, kind of supports the main idea, both strictly and sometimes indirectly, mostly strictly. Anyway, for this you have 3 sentences and you have to write at least 5 supporting details. So when you're writing the supporting details, make sure that you use, if you are aware of different types of evidence, we did talk about them, but we did not go, we did not talk about them in depth. So it's fine if you are unaware of the different types of evidence, but make sure to include some evidence, at least when you are trying to support these ideas stated here. Okay, you have 10 minutes for that, and your time starts now. Okay, so time is up. I can see that some of you have written some supporting details for the sentences, for the statements, but we still have a lot of people remaining who have not written down. Anyway, if you did not understand the assignment, it's fine. You can still write down your supporting details. We are going to go to the next slide. And in the next slide, we will talk in detail about what kind of supporting statements we could write, or supporting details we could write for the sentences. So if you look at here, I'm going to, this is another screen I have to work on. Anyway, so the statement that we have to, sorry, the idea or the main idea that we have to write supporting statements is GED program is an amazing program, is an amazing opportunity for people who want to get their high school diploma or high school equivalent diploma. As we talked about, when we want to write supporting details for any idea, we have to make sure that the supporting detail actually supports. I mean, we say that GED is an amazing opportunity because, okay, people can do this with GED. GED provides, these opportunities. That's why it's an amazing opportunity. And also on At America's website, if you have visited, sorry again, if you have visited, and also on the Notion site, you can see that if your plan is to study in the US, then GED might be one of the ways, or could be one of the ways, that you will get accepted through at a university in the US. Or something like that. Sorry about that. So if we read these statements, so this one says that you can go on your study in a university if you have the GED diploma. GED is recognized in the USA and many countries in the world. GED is equal to a high school certification. GED has 4 topics, math. Okay. Sorry, I have to unmute myself to cough really loudly. Okay. So if we talk about GED having 4 tests for subjects that you have to take the test of. So how does that support GED being an amazing opportunity? Does having 4 tests kind of make GED an amazing opportunity? So that reason does not support GED. That could be kind of like in the introduction when you were talking about GED, that could be used to lay the foundation about what GED is, and it gives some information about the GED program and GED tests. But if you want to support this main idea, then that is not it. Okay. Now let's go to the next one. I'm sorry, I think I have gotten sick again. So the next statement is that prison is one of the worst places on the planet. Okay. This is, of course, an opinion, maybe an idea put out by someone, and you need to support it. So if you read, prisons are good places if you're not criminal, But if you are, then you should deal with it. Okay, good. That is your opinion. Might be a good one. Not sure about it. But does it really support these statements? So you have to make sure, if you want to talk about prisons being, being a place for criminals, and you want people to say that you should avoid that place because that is a bad place, hence you should avoid committing crimes. Okay? But kind of, advising people on a matter to support this idea does not really work. So you have to make sure that you write statements or details that support the main idea. Anyway, the next one, it causes mental illness to make people more furious. Fantastic. Cause more damage to their families. Okay, they cannot be a way to solve problems. Prison only has negative impact. Fantastic. So that is how you write supporting. If you're writing an essay, you could write 5 paragraphs. Like without even trying, you could write 500 words. Like an essay of 5 paragraphs with 5 paragraphs, with more than 500 words probably, just by making those points. And each paragraph, probably 7, like one introduction, 5 paragraphs to make those points, and one conclusion. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this one has one response only. Students have a lot harder time in school than the teachers. The students are given tasks every day in school, so they spend most of time practicing and doing their homeworks. They learn to manage their time and learn basic things needed in life, which is hard to begin with at the beginning. Okay, this is good. This is good. Okay, you can say that if you're writing an essay, then you could write something about like how your students work hard as opposed to teachers who work harder, at least more than teachers. As you have mentioned here, you've talked about practicing, doing homework, and you could say that kind of to understand the opposite side of it, just to make a case for the opposite side as well. You could say that while teachers do make the syllabus, but those tasks take less time than doing homeworks, especially like when a teacher is cruel and they tell you to write down like one sentence 50 times. I don't know if you've done this. Yes, or maybe like when teachers, they do not understand the fact that you have like your life, your whole life, and school is not the only thing you have in your life, and they want to fill out all the time you have with school matters. So yes, in those situations, probably. Okay, this is great. Again, you get the idea. In the end, we'll have, as I said, a quiz where you will be tested, on all the topics that we have talked about so far and all the topics that we will cover during this session. I hope I get better as time goes by. Okay. Yep. I think that is it. If you have any questions, again, by the way, the Mintmail code has changed. If you remember the previous code, so that is not actually valid anymore. So please use this code to send me your questions or to write down your questions, because Mentimeter has the most number of days that you can keep one code for a presentation is 14 days. So if you remember, we started on the 2nd of June, and right now it's 16. So exactly 14 days ago, the code started being used, and right now it has expired. Anyway, let's continue. In today's session, we're going to talk about point of view. Point of view meaning that author's perspective, not necessarily author's opinion. It might include it. We're not going to talk about that yet. We'll talk about facts versus opinions, how to distinguish them, how to understand, or how to select the answers if you are asked during the test. So which one is a fact and which one is an opinion? Or maybe if you are to read a passage and then decide which ideas are better supported based on the evidence provided by the author. That's when you can use this. And next we'll talk about authors. We'll talk about authors or writers' tone. Basically, it means if you are speaking with someone, it's easy to understand their tone because of the intonation and the way they speak, the way they sound. But when you're reading something, so there are ways that you can understand, especially if you have been texting with your friends. Sometimes you look, oh, this person looks angry, and then you understand. Basically, you are actually analyzing the text, and you are analyzing the tone that the writer of that text has used, or at least you assume, and then you decide, or maybe you come to a conclusion what the writer's tone could be. And in the end, we'll talk about generalization or generalization. In generalization, basically, when you are generalizing, you are making a statement that is supported by facts, examples, like someone saying that, okay, like 90% of people in Indonesia have phones. Okay, great. This is something that you can talk about. And then later on, the generalization they could make, like most people in Indonesia have phones. Or maybe you could say that according to a recent poll, something, let's say, according to a recent poll, people are really happy with how their favorite football team is improving. And you could say that, okay, most of football fans, or most of that club's football fans or fans are happy with how they are doing. Anyway, we'll talk about those in detail. Do not worry. Don't worry if you don't understand them yet. Okay, point of view, meaning, as I said, author's perspective. So when you are reading something, you usually read it like any passage that you read. Even right now, who is the narrator, meaning that who has written the text. So we'll talk about that. And text can be written in first person meaning that when a text is written in first person, the author uses mean that everything that the author has written is either the author's opinion or has happened to the author. So the author uses things like I, me. These pronouns are used. So I think this is it. I have done this. When you see those things, you know that the author is actually writing from a first person's perspective. And the second person's perspective is actually rarely used, meaning that second person, if you know the pronoun, second person pronoun is you. You. And then you also have your, okay, the handwriting needs to improve. You have your, opposite pronouns, yours. Anyway, so you have you or your. This is rarely used because, it rarely happens except for, self-help books, where if you read the book, they'll say, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. That means that the author is actually writing from a second person perspective, speaking with the reader. That is easy. And what is mostly used in writing is third person perspective. And this is maybe one of the complicated ones. So from a third person perspective, meaning when a writer or someone or a narrator writes from a third person perspective, the narrator actually uses he, him, no, she, her, they, them, and of course, it. So this means that the author is either not involved in the story at all, or kind of, has been removed from the story, at least for the passage or for the paragraph that you are reading in that moment. Anyway, so third person, so he, him, the author talks things like, okay, he went to the gym. So the author is actually speaking about someone else. And third person perspective, how you have three ways of writing. So you can use three perspectives in the third person perspective or point of view, from a third person's point of view. The first one is third person objective. Third person objective meaning it basically means that the author doesn't really know what goes through someone's mind and talks about dialogues and actions only. So let's say it says that, for instance, says that, okay, Sarah went to visit her friend, say, Jackie. Okay, and then you say, hey, hi. And then you say, okay, said Jackie. Oh, and she saw Sarah, approaching her. Anyway, so if you read this, the author actually talks only about actions and dialogues. And it's up to the reader to infer, as we talked about, to kind of make logical inferences. We talked about it, how to make logical inferences, how to read between the lines. We talked about those. If you have questions about those topics, again, go to the Mentimeter, go on Mentimeter and to the code and ask your questions there, and I'll try to answer them in the next session. So it talks about actions. If you look at this really, simple example. So action, what is the action here? So the action is actually Sarah going to visit Jackie. And what is the dialogue here? The dialogue here is hi. Okay, this is the dialogue. Okay, so in the next one, the next perspective or the next point of view from a third person perspective is third person limited. Third person limited is when an author kind of focuses on only on one character, meaning that the author actually knows everything about that character, but does not really explain everything about it, does not write down or does not state everything that goes through either character's mind or maybe like what they feel. So the author actually focuses only on one character, maybe sometimes the protagonist only. If you have read books about someone, then you notice that the main characters' thoughts are expressed thoroughly, but some other characters' thoughts are not expressed as thoroughly as the main character, the protagonist. So third person limited, meaning that if you are writing a book about, let's say, the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, let's say okay, that is why, that's Mark, not Mark. Is that how you write it? Not sure about it. Anyway, Mark, yes, Mark Zuckerberg. Anyway, you're reading about this character, and the writer has written something like, okay, Mark was furious when he heard like, for instance, like that. Has been growing. No faster than oh, than all meta products. Okay, so when you read about that, you see that a feeling is actually mentioned here. This one. So you know that the author knows exactly how one specific character from this perspective, from third person's perspective, the limited version. So understands or knows and actually expresses how the main character, or that one character that the author focuses on, feels, says things, and what that one person does. And then you could even talk about, you could even go on and talk about other characters, but no, they don't talk about. The author actually does not express other characters' feelings and emotions. So about other character, let's say someone named, let's say Julia, is an employee. Julia knocked, for instance, Julia knocked on Mark's office door. So, hi. Oh, let's say, what's new, Mark? Said Julia, for instance. after Mark opened the door. So in this example, you can see that it talks about, the author actually talks about it, the characters' actions and dialogues, but the author does not talk about other characters' feelings and thoughts. This actually, this really simple example to go on and talk about. Again, Julia says, okay, have you heard about the news about TikTok's growth in the last 6 months? And Mark furiously says that he has. And then Mark goes on and talks about how he is planning, to make Facebook grow faster than ever, just like he used to. And then goes on. And then talks about, Julia leaving the office, and then Mark kind of sitting there thinking, how can I do this? How can I achieve? How can I overcome this great challenge? Mark thinks to himself. Anyway, but does not really talk about Julia, what Julia thinks when she goes out of Mark's office. That is third person limited. Third person omniscient, or all knowing, on the other hand, talks about all the characters' feelings, thoughts, actions, dialogues. Basically knows everything about everyone and expresses all to the reader. So third person omniscient, like this is a phrase used for God. So God is one of the attributes of God, is said to be omniscient, meaning knows everything, all knowing. So the writer, when the writer creates a book or writes a book, so the author actually creates all these characters in their mind, and the author decides to express all the emotions, all the thoughts, all the actions to the reader. So this is, in continuation to that, in addition to talking about Mark's feelings about, or Mark's kind of contemplation on how to overcome this great challenge. So it goes on and talks about, so when Julia went back to her office, she felt that Mark is overwhelmed by this new challenge or issue. Okay, so as you can see in here, the author goes on and talks about, in this scenario, by the way, I am the author. So when you see words about emotions, about thoughts, about actions, and this actually is true for all the characters, then you can confidently say that the author or the narrator is a third person, but an omniscient third person, meaning that the author knows everything about everyone in the book or in the passage. That is it. As I said in the beginning, we'll get back to this and we'll talk more about author's purpose. We'll talk more about a text purpose. We'll talk more about word choices. So like what kind of words authors use when they want to sort of negate someone, or badmouth something, or talk negatively about something. And we'll go on and talk about how we can analyze those words and how we can understand author's purpose for the text purpose. Okay, the next one is again point of view examples. So this is the first passage. I want you to read this as well and send your answers in the chat box. I'm not going to have Mentimeter. If you read this and you have an answer and you understand from which point of view or from which perspective this is being narrated, then feel free to send your answers in the chat box. So passage one, you shouldn't argue with people on the internet. It's a waste of time and energy. Do you want to spend your time, your precious life energy, trying to type sense into some delusional fool who will only hate you for your efforts? No, you don't. The next time someone makes some outlandish claim that infuriates you, you should either ignore them, unfriend them, or block them. You will find these actions to be more satisfying than casting your pearls of wisdom before the likes of swine. Again, very obvious. As I said, the pronouns. Oh, what happened? So the pronouns you, your, again, you. You know that, you know, I'm speaking from a second person's perspective. After reading all these yous, you know that this is actually written from a second person's perspective or second person's point of view. The next example, the green fox legs were sore. He had been sitting on a tree branch for several hours, waiting for the sheriff. He believed that the sheriff would be coming this way to transport some prisoners, one of whom might be the green fox's best friend, Lavender Luke. The green fox heard the sound of hooves approaching. He swung down from the branch by his knees and observed an armored carriage with the royal symbol on the door. That's our mark. Get ready, boys, the green fox shouted to his men. Okay, just by reading this and looking at the words and remembering what I said about an author writing from third person perspective, like limited version, objective version, or omniscient. So from a limited third person limited perspective, the author talks about only one character and talks about only one character's thoughts, but talks about all the characters' actions in the limited objective. In the third person objective, the author talks about all the characters' actions and dialogues only. And in third person omniscient, the author talks about all the characters' actions, dialogues, and thoughts, also feelings. Anyway, after reading this, you can see that he had been sitting on a tree branch for several hours waiting for the sheriff. This is an action, great action. He believed, see? So the word believe tells you that the author is trying to express or is expressing what a character, a certain character, believes or believed. So that the sheriff would be coming this way to transport some prisoners. Again, Lavender Luke, Green Fox heard the sound. This is action, approaching his swung down prison, he's observed, armored carriage, again, action, action, action. But this one, believe, makes all the difference. And you can understand that this point of view is a third person limited point of view, or this text is written from a third person limited point of view or perspective. Let's go to the next one. The next example is Argo looked suspiciously at his partners. Suddenly, the red robber, and Johnny the Kid did not seem like such trustworthy companions to Igo. And Igo was not the only suspicious one. Suspicions ran rife in the camp. The red robber and Johnny the Kid had grown increasingly doubtful of Igo's loyalty, or Igo's loyalty. Not really sure about the name. The Kid felt that Igo was using them as stepping stones in Igo's saga. The whole camp was a tinderbox on a powder keg, and Johnny the Kid would be the end to spark it off. Okay. This is interesting, right? If you read it the first time, you might not understand it. The words, as I said, if you see emotional words, or if you see words that only someone who knows the inner feeling and inner thoughts of another person can use those words. These words like suspicious. Let's call it a John. Oh no, there is not Johnny. It's called Jim. Jim looked suspiciously. Not sure about if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. Anyway, so Jim looked suspiciously at his partners. This, suspicion, you can only know, or you can know when someone is suspicious of something, only when you know that person's inner feelings and inner emotions and inner thoughts. Anyway, suddenly the Red Robber and Johnny the Kid did not seem like such trustworthy companions to Jim. And Jim was not the only suspicious one. Suspicions ran rife in the camp, meaning that everyone in the camp was suspicious of one another. Then you can see that had grown increasingly doubtful of Jim's loyalty, sorry. So they felt, again, another emotional word. So to summarize it, in this scenario, in this type of text, you can see that the author is writing from a third person omniscient point of view, meaning that the author writes and expresses like they know everything about every character. The author knows about thoughts, actions, feelings, and if you read this, I'm sure you'll find dialogues and everything a creator knows about a creature. So the next one is facts versus opinions, how to distinguish them. In the beginning, I talked about how to distinguish facts and opinions. So sometimes you see, okay, people say that, okay, that is my opinion. But you listen carefully and you're like, no, you are stating as if it's a fact, right? So the difference between facts and opinions is that a fact stated, it doesn't really matter. Fact, like in its true meaning, means something that is true, right? But when you're reading a passage, in a passage, sometimes, authors use invalid facts or invalid evidence or invalid facts as evidence. Anyway, so statements stated as facts can be proven, though disproven. Should be disproven. Why? It should not be disproven. Can be proven, though disproven. Anyway, both are correct. So when an author writes something like, or when you read something like, okay, for instance, you say, let's say, who's your favorite singer? Let's say for actors. Let's say that DiCaprio is the best, Leonardo DiCaprio, I mean, is the best actor in the world. A statement like this cannot be proven, or proved, or disproved. So this is regarded as opinion. This can be argued. Again, the facts, when you read a fact, for instance, about the same person, you read Leonardo DiCaprio is 57. Not sure about that one. I don't know anyway. Just making this up. So is 57 years old. This is a statement, or this fact-like looking statement can be proven or disproven. So if you go and find about that person's date of birth, then you will find out whether this statement is true or false. Anyway, so the short way of saying it is statements based on facts or stated as facts can be proven or disproven. So when you read something like most people, hate K-pop, I'm going to take that risk. K-pop. I know some of you might be angry for this, but this is not my opinion. I'm just trying to teach you about something. So most people hate K-pop. Is it an opinion or a fact? This statement is really tricky because this could be true, but this or false, but you can prove this only by asking everyone in the world whether they hate K-pop. So this is, when you see things like this is something that we'll talk about later on. This is called generalization or generalization. Do not mistake that for opinion or fact. Okay, so opinion is something that cannot be proven or disproven. Basically, it's someone's personal opinion, someone's point of view. You hear something, you like something, you think something is true, and you can argue with anyone about that, and no one can prove you wrong. Facts, when you say that, when you say things like, okay, Ahmad is going to school. This is stated as fact. And this can be proven either true or false. Anyway, the next one is opinions cannot be proven or disproven. They can be argued, as I stated in the previous slide. For instance, you say that lemon juice is the most tasty juice. And then you are confident in the whole universe, in the lemon juice is the most tasty juice in the whole universe. First of all, have you seen the whole universe? Anyway, so if you read something like this, or when you read something like this, something that cannot be proven or disproven, then you know that it's an opinion. So things like most, biggest in terms of size can be proven or disproven if it's a physical thing. So when someone says, I'm a biggest fan, right? So someone talks about liking either, hopefully, a scientist, but unfortunately, most people like either singers or actors or people in pop. Anyway, what? So when you read the words and you use the superlative forms of adjectives being used, then you know that it's probably an opinion, unless you know that that statement can be proven. So you say that, let's say, for instance, Burj Khalifa is the shortest skyscraper or building in the world. Just by looking at this, you know that that's not true. But you know that this can be disproven. So, but when someone states an opinion that that you know is not true, but you still cannot prove or disprove. Someone states something like, I like reading more than anything in the world. Okay, this could be true, but there is no way to prove it or disprove it. Therefore, this one is an opinion. So if someone says, I read 12 hours a day, that is a fact, and that can be either proven or disproven. But something like this, like, feel, think, in my opinion, so mostly the writers or the authors use, in my opinion, from my point of view, when you see those things, when you see those phrases, use it to express something, emotional words, so kind of words that express emotions, then you know that those statements are probably opinions and cannot be disproven. Maybe you can be like, okay, I can argue with this person. Okay, if you like reading so much, why don't you read every day? That person says, okay, I did not talk about reading every day. Doing the reading, I talked about liking the reading. You can like something without doing it. I did not say I read every day. Again, no, you can go kind of back and forth with that person, but in the end, none of you will be able to prove or disprove. And then in the end, you say, okay, let's agree to disagree. It's your opinion. You have the right to have your own opinion about anything. Anyway, so to summarize, facts can be proven or disproven, or statements stated as facts can be proven or disproven, but opinions cannot. Opinions can only be argued. You can argue whether it's true or not, but you can't really prove it. Okay. So author's tone, why it matters, how to identify, title, main idea, word choice. We'll talk about this in detail later on because we have limited time, but I'm going to go through this really briefly. So why it matters? It matters because you want to know the moment you see emotional words, things like if you see a statement and then you see vigorously, oh, like angrily. No, words that express emotions, emotional words. When you see those things, or when you see, adjectives, and also when you see adverbs, then you know how the author feels or what is the tone of the author of the passage that you are reading. So, for instance, you have an author talking about someone speaking angrily and then upsetting someone else. They know that the author actually is blaming it on the speaker or on the person who spoke angrily. And if you read, let them write this. So if you say, okay, so let's say Jim shouted. Jim shouted at Dwight. Dwight Schrute. Jim shouted at Dwight, which oh, which made Dwight sad. If you read this statement, the next statement I'm going to write is actually the same, but you will understand what connotation it gives to the reader. So Jim shouted at Dwight, which made Dwight sad. If you read it from Dwight's perspective, Dwight got sad. Because Jim shouted at him. Same sentence, same meaning, but different connotation. Connotation meaning that gives you different feeling about the situation. So when you read the first one, Jim shouted at Dwight, which made Dwight sad. You can see the focus is on Jim's work and that thing making Dwight sad. But in the second one, Dwight got sad because Jim shouted at him. You still receive the same information, but in the second, after reading the second sentence or the second version, then you kind of feel Dwight's emotion more than Jim's action. Okay, so when you're reading, be careful and pay attention to these details. You read positive thing, like Jim was really angry because he cared about the employees and he did not want everyone to get fired due to not making enough money in the area to cover the costs. Anyway, If you read something like that, and then you read this statement, then you know that the author is actually trying to justify Jim's action. Or if you read something like, okay, Dwight is an emotional person, gets sad very easily, or gets hurt very easily, or gets emotionally very easily. These phrases, if you read them and then you read this statement, Dwight got sad because Jim shouted at him, or Jim shouted at Dwight, which made Dwight sad. Because this was, set up in the beginning, was kind of the foundation of this implication was laid in the beginning, then you know how to feel about Dwight. If you read something like, okay, Dwight is an emotional person, gets emotional very easily, gets sad very easily, gets sad very easily. If you read that and then you come and read this, then you're like, okay, maybe Jim did not do a really bad thing. The shouting was not as bad to make Dwight sad. Anyway, so when you read that, when you read a passage or a text, pay attention, of course, to the title. This was when you talked about the main idea. When you read the title, you understand, like sometimes you understand exactly what the text is going to be. You understand the topic of the text, and then eventually understand the main idea and supporting details. Then you know exactly how the author feels about it. This is if it's written, from first, second, third, all the different types of third person perspectives. If it's written from those perspectives, then you know that the author is trying to say either something negative or positive or neutral about the topic or the main idea. Anyway, so the next one is generalization. Generalization basically is a statement based on evidence, examples, and logical reasoning. Logical reasoning meaning that, you say that, okay, people should not do this, and most people do this because, this is good and for all these reasons. So that is logical reasoning based on evidence. So when you say based on evidence, meaning that you have to have some type of evidence. As we talked in the second or third session, I think we talked about different types of evidence. We talked about, an expert's opinion or different expert's opinion. So expert opinion, expert opinion serves as evidence. If you're talking about something, a historical event, then you know that person to talk about. You cannot ask surgeons to talk about historical events and then expect people to support the narrative because a surgeon has talked about it. Anyway, expert opinion, you have, statistics. So with statistics, you can see that, percent like polls, 9 out of 10 people believe this, and this would be 90% right, or 1 out of 10 people don't believe it, this would be 10%. These are statistics. You read like 20 million people did this, 2,000 people did this. These are all statistics, numbers basically. When you see numbers and the numbers can be proven or disproven. You know that they are actually written there to serve as evidence for the main idea or against the main idea. Anyway, so examples could be something. This got really messy. Maybe I should do this. You understand this text, so you don't have to have this on the screen. Anyway, yep. going to try to write in a smaller font. So, excuse me. You have express statistics. You can have, let's say examples, and examples could be either from a first person's perspective, meaning that the author has gone through what he or she or they are trying to say, or the author actually talks about another person and talks about it as second person, and talks about it as a third person to you about an example of how people do it. Let's say, as I said, generalization basically means a statement based on evidence, examples, and logical reasoning. And this statement is usually used to talk about either most or all. It rarely talks negatively. So it usually talks positively, uses like most people believe this. And this is generalization. When you say most people uh, most people watch the latest drama series if they on on Netflix. When you read a statement like that, in order for this generalization to be true, or to be valid, the correct word is if there is some kind of poll or some kind of research has been done that has proved that more than 50% of the population watches. More than 50% of the population, when that many people watch this, then you know that this generalization is actually valid. Next slide is also going to be about this, so please do not worry. When you make statements, let's say you have this passage here, and this passage it talks about, 10 of my friends, 10 of my friends play football. While I hate it. Anyone who hates football should be in prison. Anyway, while I hate it, more than anything. If you remember from the previous slide, we talked about facts and opinions. And then it goes, this person goes on, talks about, I have let's say 14 right, 14 friends. Okay, you read this statement, or you read, let's say this is the main idea of a really long passage. Then the generalization that you can make, or the statement that you can make, the statement that you can state based on the evidence provided, or based on the main idea, or the whole passage anyway, based on the evidence or examples and all, then you can say that let's name this person. Let's use a name. Let's say yes, Asha. So Asha, oh no, this is going to be ruined. I have to do it all the anyway. So 10 of my friends play football while I hate it more than anything. I have 14 friends. Okay, great. If you look at the evidence, or if you look at the statements here, then you know that, okay, this person has 14 friends, and 10 out of 14 friends not like football. If you then divide it by that, that would be 5 out of 7. And if you divide it further, then you could certainly say that. Then you could certainly say that if you divide it further. So divide 7, I'm doing math. So this would be around 4.1 or something. Anyway, so then you know that 70%, meaning more than half of this person's, friends play football. Then you can say that most of this person's this person's friends play football. Anyway, you get this. This is valid. But if you have, let's say, one of my friends, one of my friends plays football while I hate it more than anything. I have 14 friends. If you have that, then this actually changes. Now, this generalization becomes invalid because based on the statements, based on the evidence provided in the passage, this is an invalid generalization and it's not supported in any shape or form in the text. Then you have to say that, say one of my friends or most of my friends do not play football. Only one does. So most of my friends do not play football. Then that generalization would be true. Anyway, so we had this, but I'm going to send this through Google form. This is the quiz. And I'll ask the staff at America to send this to you through email, and then you can go and open this file on Google form and take the assessment. Please let me know again if you have any questions with this new Mentimeter code 4426 841. The previous code is not valid anymore. So if you have any questions, please go there. And this is the end of session 5. If you have any questions, yes, you definitely can access this session on YouTube. If you have Notion, by the way, then you definitely know that all these sessions are, the YouTube videos of the sessions are embedded on the Notion site. You can watch all these sessions on Notion and use YouTube server. So let me find out the Notion, and I'll definitely, yes, I should be able to send you the Notion link. Let me try that. I am going to stop sharing my screen, and so let me go there. Mm-hmm. This is the Notion pages link. Just by clicking on this link, you can go to the Notion site. And anyway, take care, and yes, you too have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you so much, Zach, for today's session. It's been very informative. Earlier in the event, I mentioned that at America, it's once again open to the public, so feel free to bring your friends and families to come enjoy our events and facilities in person. And with that, that wraps this episode. It's been fun, but we have to say goodbye for now. Follow our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at ATAmerica for our fun contents, event updates, and so much more. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. Again, my name is James, and we'll see you at the next At America TV episode. Goodbye, everyone.